Hello, my name is Emma, and in today's video, we are going to talk about the difference between meanwhile and while, okay? So oftentimes these words are confused, and I will tell you when to use which. So let's get started. First of all, I have two sentences. The first sentence, I will do my homework while you watch TV. The second sentence, I went to a concert, period. Meanwhile, comma, my friend was at a restaurant. Okay. I want you to think for 1 second. Can you see any differences between these sentences? I know they're different sentences, but try to think, what is the difference between while and meanwhile? Take a guess. Okay. So let me explain some of the differences. Both of these, while, meanwhile, both of them have a very similar meaning. You use it when two things, two actions are happening during the same time, at the same time. Okay, so when two things are happening usually at the same time. So the difference is really in how we construct the sentence. If you look at my chart here, I have while versus meanwhile, or meanwhile versus while. One of the first differences I want to point out is that meanwhile connects two sentences. So we have our first sentence, I went to a concert, period. Meanwhile, comma, my friend was at a restaurant. So meanwhile, you always need two sentences. The actions are split up into two sentences. Another thing that's important to know is that you can't have meanwhile here. Meanwhile, I went to a concert, my friend was at a restaurant. It doesn't work. It always has to be two actions, and meanwhile goes between these two actions. So there's always a sentence about an action, and then meanwhile with the second action. Okay, so it connects two sentences. While, what do you notice? I will do my homework while you watch TV. How many sentences are there? If you said one, you are correct. This is just one whole sentence. So we still have two actions. The first action, I will do my homework. Second action, you watch TV. But it is all in one sentence. There is only one period, not two. So that's a major difference between while and meanwhile. Two sentences versus one sentence. What's another difference? Let me jump here. Notice where meanwhile is located in the sentence. It's at the beginning of the second sentence, like I mentioned. So you say the first sentence, meanwhile, second sentence. Whereas with while, it can be at the beginning or middle of a sentence. So for example, I could say, I will do my homework while you watch TV. This is in the middle of a sentence. But I could change this sentence to, while you watch TV, comma, I will do my homework. So you have a choice with this. It can be here or here. I could say, while I do my homework, you can watch TV. So the placement of while can change. Meanwhile, it can't change. It's stuck where it is. So let's look at some more differences. So what are some other differences between while and meanwhile? Well, one of them you might have noticed is the comma. Meanwhile, so I have some new sentences here. Actually, let me first tell you these sentences. Every day, I eat breakfast while reading the newspaper. While you sang, comma, I took pictures of you. Mom worked all day, period. Meanwhile, comma, I was at school. So what can you notice about commas? There is a comma always after meanwhile. Okay. So that's a difference. With while, is there a comma right after while? Like this? No. There's no comma there. Okay. What is another difference? Well, Meanwhile is followed by a subject. What's a subject? I, you, she, he, they, we, the dog, the cat. These are all subjects. So if we look at meanwhile, jump to the side. So mom worked all day. Meanwhile, comma, I. I is a subject. So we have subject and then the verb. I was. Meanwhile, she was. Meanwhile, he ate a sandwich. Meanwhile, we went to the mall. So you always need a subject after meanwhile. With while, it's a little different. You can have a subject. Like, for example, while you sang, I took pictures. So here you have your subject. But it's not always necessary. Oftentimes, while is followed by a verb with ing. Here's an example. Every day I eat breakfast while reading the newspaper. There's no subject. It's just, I know that it's talking about I. You don't have to repeat the I. So while can be followed by verb ing. I could also say, while reading the newspaper, I ate breakfast. Okay, so these are some more differences. Okay, is there anything we missed? Nope. All right, so now let's do some practice questions together to see and to make sure that you know the difference between while and meanwhile. Okay, so let's look at our first sentence. People were at home watching TV, blank, aliens were planning their invasion of the Earth. Ooh. So what do you think it is? Do you think it's while aliens were planning their invasion of the Earth, or meanwhile aliens were planning their invasion of the Earth? Think about it for a second. What clues do you have? Point out a clue. You have a period here. Does that help? The answer is meanwhile, because we have two sentences. And what comes after meanwhile? Comma. Good. Okay. Next question. Blank. I was waiting for Jeremy. I heard a loud noise. Is it meanwhile I was waiting for Jeremy, I heard a loud noise? Or while I was waiting for Jeremy, I heard a loud noise? If you said meanwhile, you are incorrect. The answer is while. So while I was waiting for Jeremy, comma, I heard a loud noise. Why is it while? Meanwhile? Okay, well, first of all, how many sentences do you see? There's only one sentence here. Okay, so that's point one, why we use while. Secondly, meanwhile is never at the beginning. It's between two sentences. In this case, while can be at the beginning. Okay, one other thing I want to point out here. While I was waiting for Jeremy, comma. If while is at the beginning of the sentence, after you do while, subject, verb, object, comma before the next part. Let's check out question number 3. I read a lot of books, blank. I was on the airplane. Okay, so what do you think it is? Meanwhile or while? If you said while, you are correct. I read a lot of books while I was on the airplane. How do we know it's while? Well, again, how many sentences do you see? You see one sentence, therefore we can tell it's while. So to practice more of these types of questions, to practice the difference between while and meanwhile, I want to invite you to our website, www.engvid.com. There will be a quiz, and you can practice this more. Also, if you would like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, come check it out. Until next time.